Want to test your code like a pro? Let's take a look at the in-order method in Mockito, which lets you see how to verify that your dependencies are working flawlessly. This is a simple but very powerful technique. Let's get to it. Now what we have here is an interface called Payment Processor. And the idea behind the Payment Processor is it has two methods in it. One to authorize a payment at a given amount, and one to then capture it, to transfer the funds when they are ready and authorized. I want to use this in a payment service. The payment service has a payment processor as an attribute, and I provided a constructor to make it easy to plug in. I'm going to plug in a mock of this object. This is the method I want to test. I want to call process payment with an amount, and here's the key. On the dependency, the payment processor, we have to call authorize payment and get back true before we call capture payment. We have to verify that those methods are being called in order with the right arguments. Now I could use a real system. I could do an integration test with all this, but I don't want to use my regular payment processor. That could cost me money. And in some cases, maybe I don't have that implemented yet. So instead, I'm going to use Mockito. So here is my payment service test. I'm using Mockito's mock method to create a mock of the payment processor. So that will generate the mock object just given the class. The next step is to do what they call setting the expectations on the mock. So here what I'm doing is saying when we call authorized payment with any double on the mock, then just return true. And also when we call capture payment on the processor, then return true. So again, I'm not concerned with the details of the processor. That's a dependency. I'm not trying to test the dependency. I'm testing my payment processor. So here I can use that constructor to inject the dependency into the class that I do want to test, which is my payment service. And then I call process payment. That's the test. I want to invoke process payment with a value of 100 and assert that I get back true, that everything's working. But we can do more. This is Mockito's in-order method. The in-order method is in the Mockito class as a static method, returns an in-order object that wraps 0 or more mocks. So in this case, I only have one mock. I'll wrap it, and when I do a verify called on in order, this will verify that authorized payment with a double was called on the processor first, and then capture payment was called by the processor after that. So this verifies that the methods on the dependency were called the right number of times with the right arguments, but also in the right order. If I execute this test, you will see that it does in fact pass. Everything's working. Now let's say I reversed the order of those two in my test. Then the test will fail, because in order really is verifying that the methods are being invoked in the proper order. I get an error that says verification in order failure. So let's reverse that back. Now you might have noticed when I looked at the details of the in order method, it doesn't just take a single mock, it could take a whole set of them. So let's generalize this problem to work with two dependencies instead of one. I'm going to introduce here a shipping service. The shipping service is again an interface. It has a method called ship product to a particular address, returns a Boolean again just to let us know this worked successfully. My order service now, the order service that I want to test, has both the payment service in it and the shipping service in it. So I've got two dependencies this time. I provided a constructor, again, to make it easy to plug my mock objects into this order service. Because again, I'm not concerned with the details of the services. I'm concerned with this method down here. That's the method I want to test, process order. That'll take a double amount and a string address to ship it to. So this time I call process payment on the payment service with the amount, and if that returns true, then I call ship product on the shipping service with the address. So if everything works, we go through the payment and then the shipping object and return the value. So this is the business logic that I want to verify. Okay, looking at the test now, here is my order service test. Now this time, to clean things up a little bit, I'm going to use the JUnit 5 extension called Mockito extension. By using this extension from JUnit 5, I have the ability to use these mock annotations and this inject mock annotation to create the mocks and plug them into the class I'm testing automatically. Just by annotating these two services with that mock, Mockito will create the mocks for me, so I can skip that step in my test, and inject mocks will look for the biggest constructor in order service that takes those mocks and plug them in, and I have a constructor again designed for that purpose, just to make this easier. So in my test, I no longer have to create the mocks or inject them into the service. Instead, I'll start right away by setting the expectations. So on the payment service mock, when I call process payment with any double, just return true. And on the shipping service mock, when I call ship product with any string, again, return true. That's the expectations. Here's what I want to actually test. I set up an amount that's a double. I set up a string address, and I'm going to call process order on the order service with the amount and the address. And again, assuming everything works properly, that should return true. But here's the cool part. Not only do we verify that the process order method returns what we expect, we can verify the, quote, protocol, the interaction of our test object with the dependencies. So here I use InOrder to wrap both mocks, the payment service mock and the shipping service mock. So now when I call InOrder.verify, I'll say verify that the process payment method with this amount was called on the payment service mock first, and then the ship product method with that address was called on the shipping service mock after that. And when I run this, now I have confidence that not only is my logic correct, but even the methods on the dependencies are being called right number of times, which is 1 here, that's the default, with the right arguments, either the double or the string, in the right order, which is what the InOrder method from Mockito is buying me. Very easy to use, very helpful, and I hope it helps you in the future. Please subscribe to this channel for further tips and tricks. Take care.